is Carl Rogers' self-theory. He believed in the inherent goodness of people. So, mabuti daw tayong tao. Meron tayong goodness sa loob natin. Next is emphasize the importance of free will and psychological growth. Meron daw tayong free will and we are able to aim or get a psychological growth. Next is he suggested the actualizing tendency is a driving force behind human behavior. So, actualizing tendency is contentment. Human beings are always striving for self-fulfillment or self-actualization. So, yung mga tao daw ay gustong maabot yung self-actualizing tendency or contentment in life. Next, when the needs of the self are denied, severe anxiety may result. So, kapag na-deny daw yung needs ng self, meron daw magkaka-anxiety daw tayo or merong mangyayaring problema. He proposed the self-theory or the person-centered or client-centered theory. Next, the self-concept. So, it refers to the image of oneself. Define the self as flexible and changing perception of personal identity. Self develops from interaction with significant people and self-awareness. So, there are three components of self-concept. The self-image, ideal self, and self-esteem. What is self-image? Self-image is the way we see ourselves. So, self-image includes what we know about ourselves physically. For example, our brown hair, blue eyes, we are tall, or our social roles such as being a wife, being a daughter, being a sister, and our personality traits such as outgoing, you are kind, you are serious. Next is the ideal self. The ideal self is the self we would like to be. So, ano ba yung gusto mo paglaki? Gusto mo maging pulis, bombero, sundalo, ganon. Yan yung ideal self natin. Next is our self-esteem. So, self-esteem is the value we place upon ourselves. Parang self-confidence ito. Okay? Ito yung tatlong self-concept ni Carl Rogers. Next is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is probably the most sikat. Siya yung pinakasikat sa lahat ng psychologist na nakilala ko. Yung tawag namin sa kanya is Papa Freud. According to Sigmund Freud's theory, the mind daw is like an iceberg. Kita nyo yung picture na yan. It floats 1/7 of its bulk above the water. In here, he explained that our mind, ang conscious lang daw, is just 1/7 and most of the part underneath is our unconscious. So, eto, sa taas, yung conscious na part, yan lang daw yung conscious na part natin. So, 1/7 lang daw yan. While, most of our mind is unconscious. O, kita nyo yan. Nakalubog daw sa ilalim. So, ito yung pre-conscious. Dito, pwede ditong mag-appear yung dreams. Next is the three structures of personality. Di ba nakita nyo doon sa first part yung ego, dito sa may pre-conscious, super-ego, and id. So, we will discuss these three structures of personality. So, according to Freud, id is the pleasure principle. Okay, what is that? It is the original system of the personality from which the ego and superego emerge. Next is the ego or the reality principle. So, it is the branch of personality ruled by reality principle and attempts to exert reality-based influence over id and superego. And lastly, superego. It is our moral principle. It is the other extreme of the personality and can be considered as the judicial branch and concerned with moralistic issues determining right or wrong. So, did you see the GIF here in the side? So, yung ego dyan is yung tao na naka-yellow. While yung id is the red one. Yung angel, siya yung superego. Yung ego, siya yung nagbabalance sa good and bad. For example, sabi ni id, nagugutom ka, nagugutom na ako, nguni. Pero, meron pa kayong online class. Let's say online class. Okay, pero sabi ni Ed, nagutom na ako, ang tagal naman, sige na, kain na tayo. Yon. Sasabihin ni super ego, wait lang, kapag kumain tayo, baka mag-recitation si ma'am, tapos kapag hindi ka nakasakot, masisiro ka. So, si ego naman, siya yung magde-decide. Sasabihin ni ego, sige, after ng online class natin, diretso tayo sa kusina at kakain tayo. Or, di kaya, patayin ko na lang muna yung camera, tsaka lakasan ko yung volume ng speaker ko para kahit dun tayo sa kusina, maririnig pa rin natin si ma'am. Siya yung ego, yung nagbabalance sa id and the super ego. Next is the psychosocial stages. So, in here is, the first stage is the oral stage. It is from first 18 months of life. Anal stage is 18 months to 3 years old. Phallic stage is 3 to 6 years old. Latent stage occurs between 6 to 12 years old. And genital begins at puberty and continues for the rest of your life. What happened in the first stage or the oral stage? In here, children derive pleasure from oral activities such as sucking and tasting. So, lahat ng bagay, 'di ba, pinupulot ng mga bata at saka nilalagay sa mouth nila, 'di ba? Napansin nyo? Yung mga 1-year-old, mga ganon, nilalagay nila yung kahit ano yung madampot nila. Okay? That is the oral stage. In anal stage, children begins potty training here. So, yung pagpoop nila or yung pagwiwi nila. Dito yan. Next is the phallic stage. Boys are more attached to their mother while girls are more attached to their father. So, boys attached to their mother, sometimes it is called the Oedipus complex. While girls that is more attached to their father is the Electra complex. Next is the latency stage. Children spends more time and interact mostly with same-sex peers. So, palagi silang nag-interact sa mga friends nila. In genital stage naman, individuals are attracted to opposite sex. So, dito na yung mga boyfriend-girlfriend. Next is the defense mechanism. What is defense mechanism? Defense mechanism are behaviors people use to separate themselves from unpleasant events, action, or thought. Okay, it is a psychological strategy which will help the people put distance between themselves and threats or unwanted feelings such as guilt or shame. The first one here is denial. Okay, ano ba yung denial? So, it is the refusal to recognize or acknowledge threatening situation. For example, sa love, nag-break kayo ng boyfriend mo. The first stage in grief is denial, di ba? Yung dinideny mo na, hindi pa tayo break. Ganon. Kapag magtanong yung ibang kaklase mo, break na ba kayo ni ganito? Ay, hindi pa. Pero sa totoo, break na pala kayo. Dininay mo lang. So, that is a defense mechanism. And next is repression, an attempt to cope by creating an avoidance response. For example, here is not remembering a traumatic incident you witnessed as a child. So, for example, crime. May pinatay. Tapos yun, rinepress mo lang. Linagay mo yung scene na yon or yung crime na yon or yung situation na yon sa pinakadulo ng utak mo. Parang kinalimutan mo na. So, that is repression. Dito, attempt to cope by creating an avoidance response. You put that unpleasant event or situation sa unconscious mo. Next is rationalization. It is creating false excuses for unacceptable feelings, thought, or behavior. For example, cheating. Sabihin mo, kasi nag-cheat din kasi yung kaklase ko, kaya nag-cheat na din ako. So, you justify your unacceptable behavior. Next is projection. It is an attempt to attribute to another person's own thoughts or feelings. So, in here, for example, ikaw nag-cheat ka or madami kang kabit. Tapos, inuunahan mo yung boyfriend mo na sabihin mo sa kanya, ina-accuse mo siya na Na, cheater ka, cheater ka. Pero sa totoo pala, ikaw pala yung nag-cheat. Okay? You project your feelings or your thoughts towards the other person. Parang inuunahan mo siya, ay, hindi ako yung cheater, ikaw yung cheater. Pero sa totoo, ikaw pala yung cheater. Okay? That is projection. So, defense mechanism din yan. Next is reaction formation. It is a way of coping by creating an extreme emotional response that is opposite of how one actually feels. For example, ikaw na hindi sure sa sexualidad mo or sexuality mo, kung gay ka ba talaga or kung lesbian ka or kung ano pa ba yung mga LGBT terms, hindi ka sure sa sexuality mo. Yung ginagawa mo, nagiging homophobic ka sa LGBT community. Parang yung reaction mo opposite sa nararamdaman mo. Ikaw na hindi ka sure kung lesbian ka ba talaga or bakla ka. Pero yung mga comment mo sa LGBT community is grabe yung bash mo sa kanila or grabe yung pagka-homophobic mo. Ganon. So, that is reaction formation. So, yung reaction mo is opposite sa nararamdaman mo. Next is regression. So, it is an attempt to cope by moving back to a point in one's development that was less threatening. So, regression is like reverting back to your immature behavior. For example, in this regression is that throwing a temper tantrums as an adult when you don't get your way. So, di ba kapag yung bata tayo, kapag hindi natin nakukuha yung mga laruan or mga candy or mga cheese curls na gusto natin, nagwawala tayo, di ba? Pero ikaw, adult ka na, tapos nag-regress ka, nung hindi mo nakuha yung gusto mo, nagwala ka or nagtantrums ka na parang bata. Parang ganon yung regression. So, it is a defense mechanism. Next is sublimation, replacing socially unacceptable impulse with socially acceptable behavior. For example, in here, mahilig ka makipag-away. Yan, suntok dito, suntok doon, basag ulo dito, basag ulo doon. Yon. Tapos, dahil sa sobrang basagulera mo, nag-join ka ng boxing. Replacing socially unacceptable impulse with socially acceptable behavior. 'Di ba? Socially accepted yung boxing. So, yun, nanalo ka pa. Naging world champion ka pa. Okay, that is sublimation. Di ba? Nakakatuwa. Next is displacement. Redirecting unacceptable feelings from the original source to a safer substitute. For example, binigyan ka ng 0 ng teacher mo or pinahiya ka niya sa klase. Pag-uwi mo or pag-off-cam mo, inaway mo yung kapatid mo. Siyempre, hindi mo maaaway yung teacher mo. Teacher mo yun eh. So, sa kapatid mo na lang, redirects yung galit mo. You are redirecting unacceptable feelings from a safer target. Parang ganun yung displacement. You displace your anger towards a safer substitute, which is your sister. Next is identification. It is incorporating personality characteristics associated with someone else into your own personality in order to deal with specific situation. So, for example, adolescent talks and acts similar to a teacher she admires. Another example is a hospitalized teenager decides she wants to become a nurse. Yung parang na-inspire ka ng ibang tao. So, gusto mo din maging kagaya nila. That is identification. Next is fixation. An attempt to avoid new responsibilities. A person can avoid growing up and fixate or stand still in terms of development. So, that is the